Hello, my dear friends. You're back on my channel, and today let's try to figure out a very important topic together. Surely, many of you from time to time, and some even throughout almost your entire life, have thought that you're a failure. Or sometimes you even get the thought that you're kind of stupid and that nothing in your life will ever work out. And this particular video is specifically for you, for those individuals who from time to time genuinely feel like absolutely nothing is truly working out for them, who sometimes profoundly feel like everything is slowly slipping through their very fingers, and whatever they diligently try to do, it always inevitably falls completely apart. Sometimes the thought crosses your mind that you're not capable of anything. If you even occasionally recognize this feeling, then this video is for you. Stay until the very end of this video and we'll try to truly figure out what is really happening to an individual person when they consider themselves to be a complete and utter failure. So let's get started. The problem isn't that you're a failure. The problem is that you buy into this concept. Surely this idea didn't just come to you out of nowhere. Most likely you've encountered the opinions of people around you and perhaps even significant people in your life regarding you. And maybe your family and loved ones never directly told you that you're stupid or a failure, although that's exactly how it often happens, but they did it indirectly. Mom, am I smart? You're a beautiful girl, sweetheart. That's your strength. Your sister is the smart one. And you start to feel inside, maybe your mom meant well, I don't know, but you get this feeling inside that you don't quite fit in. You don't live up to the image your parents created. Sometimes the connection is even more complicated. Sometimes your parents just expected too much from you. They expected so much from you that no matter how much you achieved, it was never enough. And instead of, at the very end of some significant action, like successfully passing a challenging exam or actively participating in a demanding competition where you perform fairly well and achieved a respectable placement, instead of truly feeling a deep sense of pride in yourself for genuinely accomplishing more today than you managed to do yesterday, of course, your entire focus inevitably shifts to the stark realization that you absolutely did not do what your parents truly wanted and expected of you. You didn't measure up. Sometimes it is truly astonishing that very talented and highly successful people can still feel like complete failures because their personal bar, and I put "their" in quotes, is set so incredibly high by their parents within their own deeply ingrained concepts that it's simply and utterly impossible to genuinely reach it. That's why, in reality, everything that happens in our lives, all our suffering, exists on the edge of this mismatch between what is and what should be. But what does "should be" even mean? These thoughts aren't natural to us. They truly don't come from the very heart, and they absolutely can't take root in real everyday life. The way life is supposed to be arranged, if you have these ideas, notice they are just thoughts. These are thoughts that, to varying degrees of persistence, appear in your life. Wouldn't you agree? And they are nothing more than thoughts. But paradoxically, what is actually deeply rooted in the tangible reality of your existence, your concrete actions, perhaps some genuine recognition and acknowledgement from others, ultimately ends up clashing quite significantly with the often unrealistic standards and elevated expectations you've meticulously set for yourself. But again, when I say you set these standards for yourself, that doesn't mean other people didn't have a hand in it. Of course, we don't learn to set goals and expectations in a vacuum. We are usually taught to do this by our parents or by people who take their place, those who are around us, and do this either directly or indirectly. So we've already established that your persistent feeling of being a complete failure, and at times feeling utterly stupid, is simply a direct result of the undeniable fact that deep inside, you are inherently guided by a certain pervasive conceptual framework that inevitably creates expectations you simply cannot realistically live up to. That's point number one. Point number two is just as important. It lies in the fact that most often people who feel like failures are not living their own lives. Not only in terms of expectations, but also in their very lifestyle, in the way they build relationships with other people. The actions they take, the choices they make, even the way they phrase things, are all because they are forced to do something, which they end up doing. And along the way, most likely, with this feeling that you are a failure, you almost never feel inspired, Does this feeling sound familiar? And against the background of feeling like a failure, you often experience fatigue, specifically a toxic kind of fatigue. It's not the kind of tiredness you get from working really well, but a fatigue that ends in a kind of exhaustion, a sense of being down, a feeling of being drained when you don't want to do anything at all. And probably the reason for this whole situation lies in that aspect of your life where you betray yourself every time. You try to live the lives of other people. You try to live by the concepts that are whispered in your ear, telling you who you should be. But most likely you haven't really thought about what you want to do in life, what you want to pursue. What is the movement of your heart? What is your life path? You can even ask yourself this question in that way. But you haven't really asked yourself these questions, have you? We are absolutely doomed to be complete failures on someone else's life path. If your parents, either explicitly or implicitly, wanted you to become a professional, say, in the field of economics, for example, and you spent half your life on that feeling like a failure, but you never paid attention to your own desires. But if you had paid attention, you would have discovered that all this time, a talented pianist or artist, or perhaps a mathematician, a philologist, or maybe an art historian was dying inside you. But you never really thought about that, did you? So, if you feel like a failure, my friends, ask yourself this question. How sure are you that what you are doing truly matches you, your nature? This is probably one of the most difficult questions, one of the most fundamental and most challenging. It's fundamental because your entire life will revolve around it, and it's challenging because it's not a question you can answer easily. This question is often confused with the idea of destiny. For some reason, this concept of destiny, we've really blown it out of proportion. It seems like everything aligns with what I just said, but it doesn't. Destiny is just a concept. If today, as you presently sit at the very beginning of your significant life journey, and you earnestly desire to accurately predict the next 40 years, or perhaps even the next 20 years, or even the upcoming 10 years, or even the immediate 5 years of your entire life based solely upon the concept of destiny, then you are, in all likelihood, profoundly deceiving yourself and your true potential. Because when you think this way, it means you have already violated the field, violated presence, violated your own life by essentially denying yourself the right to truly live. But we often do this to children. In fact, life itself does this to us. That is, when children finish school, for some reason they have to choose who they need to become. And then we naively think that when children enroll in some university, and we even suggest to them which university to choose, for example, or which vocational school to attend, that they will dedicate their entire lives to this. If they do dedicate their whole lives to this, it will be hell on earth. The number of people violated by other people's concepts will multiply many times over. That's why, in a sense, I see it as a good thing that young men and women who graduate from university don't work in their field. For some reason, we think this is a problem. But in reality, it's not a problem. Maybe it's actually a very good thing. Thank God the world hasn't gained yet another economist or a doctor or even a soldier who truly hates their work. And who go to work only because they feel they have to. What level of professionalism can we even talk about in this case? And as a result, there's once again this feeling of, I'm a failure. But you're carrying out someone else's concepts, someone else's plans. You don't need this. So as they say, by the time the journey is over, the dog might have grown up. If today you're in love, you're 20 years old and you're in love, let me tell you about the best profession in the world, psychology. You enroll in the psychology department, but there's absolutely no guarantee that in 2 years you won't feel that psychology doesn't move you anymore. Maybe you actually wanted to do design, and maybe that's the best profession in the world. That's why I think it's actually quite healthy if young men and women, having become disillusioned with their profession, not just on a conceptual level, but in their hearts, leave that profession. Most likely, they're leaving university because of a dream. Follow that dream. That's not a bad thing. But if you leave university because you suddenly have some new idea about who you should be, then you're most likely committing yet another betrayal. Do you feel the difference? In one case, we're building a mental construct of who we'd like to be, and in the other, we're following the movement of our heart. And here, my friends, it's very important not to rush. If you're already 40 years old and after watching this video, you suddenly start wondering whether you're really living your own life. And maybe at 40, you considered yourself a failure simply because you weren't living your own life. That's probably true. But don't rush to make a revolution in your life. That's not how revolutions are made. I'll tell you how it's done. And a revolution, when you sit down and ask yourself, in the pose of Rodin's thinker, so where is my path? What do I really want? That's just an attempt to swap one concept for another. That won't bring you any joy. But asking yourself the following question, am I in the right place right now? Is this where I'm supposed to be? That's the key. How much does what's happening in my life right now align with who I am, with my true nature? How much do I actually enjoy where I am right now? But here it's very important to look for a response within yourself. Not like this. Wow, this is so cool. This is a whole new area of my life. These are new hobbies. I'm really into this. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, you drop it. Look for a response deep within yourself. Whatever you do in your life, no matter who you build relationships with, that's also a healthy thing. You fall in love with someone, you want to spend the rest of your life with them. It's just like choosing a university major. You marry them and then you realize this isn't the person you actually wanted to marry. Of course, your dream to spend your whole life together is still strong, and you suppress this difference, these discrepancies, and try not to let this image of your partner move toward disappointment, but instead reconcile it with what you actually have. You ignore these differences. A year goes by and a lot of them have piled up. What happens then? The first crisis. You start to feel shaken. A significant number of marriages break up after a year precisely because of this crisis. But even here, you can ignore yourself and convince yourself that it's your partner's fault. For example, if they're not really right for you, you'll get hit with a crisis at 3 years, at 7 years, when the first child is born and so on. And that's why the divorce statistics are extremely alarming. But actually, this might not be a bad thing, because when you separate from your partner, your heart remains open if you part not in a wave of resentment, grievances, and hatred, but with gratitude. Then you are open to new relationships, much healthier ones, because you ended things in a mature way, and are now ready to meet another partner in a much more mature way. Not just any other person, but someone who, at this stage of your development, is a better match for you. The partner you lived with played an important role. They were needed specifically at that stage. The same goes for teachers and for your profession. And now you are open to a new partner, a new profession, a new choice or calling, and new successes. Nothing was in vain. I spent 8 years in the army, 4 of which were in the airborne troops. I didn't like this occupation, not at all. Every day I went to service with a deep sense of sorrow and sadness. But nevertheless, I spent 8 years stuck in the army. Does that mean it was all for nothing? Or does it mean that it was a wonderful period of my life? No, it was simply necessary and important. I could have stayed in the army and would have felt like a failure after some time, although perhaps I would have made a career. I had enough ambition for that, but I wouldn't have become happy. All you can do is become aware at some point. And so when you ask yourself the question, should I be here? You answer no. Then ask yourself another question. What do I want? Where is my heart leading me right now? And this is a change made in very small steps. Remember that famous Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It's the same here. Your task is just one step. Don't make plans, don't set expectations, because plans and expectations come from concepts. Just take each step. If you keep taking each step, after some time you'll see that you are in a fundamentally different place. With a fundamentally different attitude toward what you do and a fundamentally different attitude toward yourself. I'm sure that if a person does what aligns with their nature, wherever they end up, they will always be successful. But don't measure success by the standards that were the benchmarks of your concepts at the beginning, because there too you will have a rather challenging experience. For example, if money was your measure of success from the very beginning, when you chose your first profession, and then you suddenly realize that you want to do, say, psychotherapy, but that measure, money, remains, you will torment yourself over not earning $100,000 a month. You will suffer a lot because of this. But does this mean that you are not successful as long as you use these criteria? I'm pointing to my head, but there are no thoughts there. Thoughts are an alien formation to our nature. They just drift by. And if you constantly give in to the influence of these concepts, you will suffer from not meeting criteria that have long since become outdated. The concepts within you are already outdated. Reevaluate these criteria. Pay attention to what you're doing. Do you actually want to be doing this? And what do you think? Are you in the right place? And by what signs do you understand that you are in the right place? From time to time, you can ask yourself the question, what is happening to me right now, am I proud of? Be careful with this question because it often triggers and hooks onto egoistic concepts, old concepts that will speak to your ambitions. You need to be very attentive with this question so as not to engage old concepts, but to discover new criteria. What am I truly proud of? And then you will find that yes, you may not be earning 100,000 a month yet, but you are making enough money for yourself. But what you are truly proud of is not that at all. For example, as a psychotherapist, you are proud that your clients are changing, that people who used to suffer from, say, obsessive-compulsive disorder now feel well and no longer step only on the cracks in the pavement on even-numbered days or jump over them on odd-numbered days. And does that make you feel good? Or do you feel that a child who had stopped sleeping, was depressed, and engaged in self-harm has now become a happy child in a happy family, and their parents have started to build close relationships on completely new principles, principles of love and mutual respect? And are you proud of that? That's wonderful. And it gets even better. When that pride starts to be replaced by a sense of gratitude to fate, to God, to your profession, and when you begin to notice that the recognition of others is no longer as valuable to you as their gratitude, even if they don't say thank you directly to you, but instead talk about what is happening to them, then you start to feel even more stable. I assure you, your feeling of being a failure will completely disappear. Because when people feel successful only based on the criteria they've set for themselves, they are always vulnerable. Today you have money and tomorrow you don't. Today you have fame and tomorrow you don't. Today you have the recognition of your students, clients, your colleagues, and tomorrow everyone may turn away from you. Does that mean you've stopped being lucky? Does that mean you've stopped being successful? No. Perhaps it's exactly this that has made you super successful. Often when our colleagues, clients, or even students turn away from us, it means that you are perhaps moving to a fundamentally new level. The most important feeling inside is that you are in the right place, that you are not betraying yourself and you won't be able to please everyone. You won't earn all the money in the world. Fame will never last forever. A significant number of individuals only became widely famous after their passing. Think of Van Gogh or Kafka. Kafka, for example, as far as I know, not a single one of his major novels was published during his lifetime. Moreover, he instructed his executor to burn, destroy, and not publish his novels. The Castle and The Trial were only published after his death. Is it really worth chasing after that? You won't be able to control it. Come on, even if you are incredibly, super popular during your lifetime, that doesn't mean that in this same life, if something happens, that popularity won't just disappear. We know plenty of examples. Or that popularity won't last even 2 months after you retire. You can't control it, but the inner sense that you are living in accordance with yourself will never go away. And that's the dynamic component of your life. So, if at some particular point in your journey you genuinely ask yourself, I've achieved significant success here, but I truly no longer want to continue doing this particular thing, will you have? Will you have enough courage to walk away from it? Will you have enough courage to move into a completely new field for yourself where you'll have to start from scratch again? Will you? That's the essence of it. This feeling that I'm in the right place, once again, is a dynamic phenomenon. You need to ask yourself this question every year, every month, every day, every hour, every minute. Am I in the right place? Does what I'm doing right now truly suit me? There is no correct scale here. This question applies to very small actions, very small choices in a conversation with another person. But it also applies to major life changes like moving to another country, changing your family status, deciding to have children or something like that. Are you true to yourself? So if you feel like a failure, maybe it's time to reflect on what your life is like. And maybe it's both much simpler and much more serious at the same time. You've never truly lived your own life before. A person is born to be successful. Not in the sense of conventional concepts, of course, but in the sense of the depth of one's own nature. You are destined to be successful, but only if you stop betraying yourself. Return to yourself with every step you take. Don't promise to return to yourself in a week, in a month, or to stay true for many years. Your interests will change, your level of maturity will change, and the people around you will have to change as well. Are you ready for this? Your level of maturity will change, your profession will disappear. For many years, I told my loved ones, my family, that psychotherapy would always be my top priority. This is my mission. I spent most of my life as a missionary, and only at some point when I matured did I stop and ask myself this question: if I no longer want to do psychotherapy, can I leave? And for the first time, I felt peace in my soul. Yes, I can. I can stop practicing psychotherapy if I feel inside myself that it's time to stop. That means it's time. Inside you, remember this, the last thing I'll say, there is something very big, unimaginably vast and wise that knows how you should live. Let's call it the heart. Have the courage to start listening to your heart, and then you'll realize that you're not a failure at all, and certainly not stupid. You just had a habit of betraying yourself, so come back to yourself. This is your chance to become truly successful. Thank you, my dear ones, for your attention. I hope this video was helpful for you. If that's the case, share it with your friends and acquaintances. Leave comments for me. I don't always have time to reply to your comments, but I almost always read them. And I'm really touched when you support each other here in the comments. Sometimes I see dozens of replies to someone's comment, to someone's life story. Don't be shy, share. You've probably noticed that the people on this channel are quite responsive, generous, empathetic, not looking to put anyone down or show off their own importance, but who are able to care for others. And even though I can't answer all your questions, sometimes I do. Your questions are collected for me and I answer them during live streams. But you can do this for each other. Let's create something like a group therapy session in the comments under this and other videos. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next videos. Bye!